we're looking. Are we looking okay? I hope so. I feel okay actually. I feel cozy. Hi friends and welcome back to my channel. I was racking my brain about what type of video I should make, and I've sort of been in this mood that I want to talk about like favorite books, favorite things, favorite tropes and all of that, because it's my birthday month and I guess I kind of want to celebrate that and talk about things I really enjoy in my videos this month. And I came across a draft for a video idea that I think I created like a year ago. And I thought that, hey, now's actually the perfect time for me to do this. This is actually a book tag called the Book Recommendations tag, which was originally created by Steph. She created this book tag called the Book Recommendations book tag, and I started to look at the questions and realized that, oh, this is the perfect excuse for me to talk about basically all my favorite books. So if you've ever been curious about Charlotte's ultimate list of favorite books, this is basically the video. Let's just get to the questions. So we have 15 questions to talk about here. Let's get to it. Since I'm going to be talking about most of my favorite books, I just want it to be said that many of these books actually qualifies for multiple of these questions, but I've really done my best to just mention a book once in this video. Give me some kudos for that. The first question is a book that you tell people is your favorite. An author I say is my favorite is Fredrik Backman, and the book I'm answering this question with is Beartown by Fredrik Backman. I'm obsessed with Fredrik Backman, you know this. I'm due for a reread of this series actually, but I think that Beartown might be my favorite Backman. There's something with Beartown and how it's able to mix a very serious topic with a lot of heart and love and soul and humor that is just astounding to me. It's remarkable, it's incredible. If you don't know about Beartown, it's a story about a hockey-obsessed town up north in Sweden with a bunch of characters that we're following. We're learning about a very traumatic and irreversible event that happens to a young girl and all the consequences and everything that transpires throughout this town following that event. This is so beautifully written. I adore this book with my entire heart and soul and being. Let's move on to a bit of a happier note, even though that one does have a lot of humor and like soul in it. The next question is a book that is your guilty pleasure. For this one, my answer is Midnight Sun by Stephanie Meyer. Look at the size of this one! Oh my god, I always forget how huge this book is. And the reason why it's a guilty pleasure is it's so niche to like a special crowd of people. It's so niche. And I love that for us. This is Twilight from Edward's point of view. I am still a huge Twilight fan. I've been for like 15 years now or something. I adore the series. Edward is my favorite character. So when this finally was released after all those years, I instantly purchased it, read it in 2 days, read this beast in 2 days, and I'm definitely due for a reread on this one as well. This is so niche. And I love that it's so niche. Next prompt is a book you read the fastest. I actually timed it, but Fangs. I read Fangs, the fastest I've ever read a book. I read it for a video where I read graphic novels and I actually clocked it. So I know that this is the fastest I've ever read a book. This is a graphic novel, very cute in this like sketchy, comic-y sort of style, about a vampire and a werewolf dating. That's all you need to know. It's feel good, it's humorous, it's solid. Next question is a book that deserves more hype. Easiest answer ever. My answer for this one is Assassin's Curse, also known as Magic of Blood and Sea. If Magic of Blood and Sea has no fans, I'm dead. So just to explain, if there's any confusion, the reasons why I'm holding up 3 books is because this one is a bind-up of these 2 books. These were the original covers, but it has since been re-released as this book. So these 2 makes for this one. So I think you can now get it as Magic of Blood and Sea, but when I read it for the first time, it was Assassin's Curse and The Pirate's Wish. And they're all stunning. Magic of Blood and Sea is such an underhyped book. I do not understand why no one ever talks about it. It's everything you would ever want from a fantasy adventure novel. It's about pirates, there's magic, there's an assassin. It's got all the tropes and it does them so well. It's the enemies to lovers story. I adore this. I want everyone to read it. I have made multiple videos talking about this one as well, so please check it out if you're able to. If it's even available anymore, I really do not know, but like you can see, I've tabbed this one a lot. It's about this woman, Anana, who is about to marry a man out of convenience, like an arranged marriage, but she decides that she does not want that life and she runs away from the wedding on a camel. The guy who she was supposed to marry, his family sends an assassin after her who she accidentally saves, which then starts a curse where he's not able to kill her and is basically forced to protect her, and they are sort of bonded together. And then they go on this quest together to break this curse, while he has a bunch of people after him and she's got a bunch of people after her, and they sort of go from being enemies to like an unwanted alliance to friends and to more. And I love this book so much. More people need to read it, honestly. Next prompt is a book that is becoming a movie/TV show. I believe this book is fairly early on, but it is rumored or even confirmed, I think, that it's gonna be a movie, I think. And that book is The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. I love this book. This is the first book in the Mistborn trilogy by Brandon Sanderson. It's a great entry to Sanderson's entire fantasy universe. And this one is just such an entertaining and fun and thrilling book. We are following a crew who are about to do a heist and are trying to fight the Lord Ruler in this fantasy universe. There's a really cool magic system that utilizes metals, and people have really cool powers, and it's just like a good crew of people doing cool things together. As I said, I do believe it's getting turned into a movie. It's probably gonna take ages until that happens, but I think the rights have been sold for this one, so that's exciting. Next up is a book you have reread the most. This is the easiest answer ever, because that book is obviously Twilight by Stephanie Meyer. I do not know how many times I read this book. I read this in Swedish multiple times, I read it in English multiple times. I'm hoping to read it in Czech one day. I have the Czech translation of it. I've also read it multiple times as fanfiction, and what I mean by that is back in the day when I read fanfiction, there were fanfics where the characters of Twilight read Twilight together and basically reacted to that. And I read plenty of those fanfics, which means that I've actually read Twilight even more times because of that. It sounds weird, sounds like an odd concept, but this was a thing back in the day, okay? Having the characters read Twilight word by word, so the author of the fanfic actually had to write out the entire Twilight book in their manuscript. I am obsessed with this story, as you know, so of course I did not mind rereading this story multiple times. As I've said with most of these books now, I'm due for a reread. I really couldn't tell you how many times I read this book. Next up we got a book from a genre you don't typically read. I read most genres. I read fantasy, romance, contemporaries, literary fiction, non-fiction. So I guess the genres I don't get to as much are mystery, thrillers, horror. So I looked at books within that genre, and I decided to recommend The Mysterious Case of the Alperton Angels by Janice Hallett. Now, Janice Hallett is very hit or miss for me. I'm learning as I'm continuing to read her bibliography, but this one is the first book I ever read by her, and this one has definitely stuck with me. Her books are told in a mixed media format, so this one, for example, is told through chat logs, texts, transcripts, excerpts from other books and things like that. Like a really fun way of telling a story. It's a mystery about a cult basically, and two, I believe they are journalists or authors, trying to write about this cult mystery and what happened 18 years ago. I can't guarantee that it's gonna be everyone's cup of tea, and as I said, Janice Hallett is very hit or miss for me. But this story in particular stood out to me, and I enjoyed it and had a good time with it. A book that deserves all of the hype that it gets. For this one, my answer is The Serpent and the Wings of Night. I read it this summer and I get it. I 100% get it. I'm obsessed with this book. I loved this book. It's so well executed while being entertaining, and just like you get obsessed with it. It does everything so brilliantly, in my opinion. This book brings vampires back in the best way, and I highly recommend this if you're looking for a good time, because that's what this was. But as mentioned as well, well executed, amazing pacing, great characters, good beautiful writing, heartfelt moments, funny moments, handled action really well, the world building, like, I only have praise for this book, honestly. Next we got a book you usually recommend when asked to give a recommendation. And I'm going to give you a real example, because I recommended this book to two different people that don't really know each other that well this last year, and both of them became obsessed with the series and have read the entire series. And that book is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. This is my go-to recommendation for fantasy. I recommended it to a colleague who read his first book and then got sucked into the entire series. Same with a friend of mine, and it's incredible. I think it's a really cool book that many people can enjoy. It starts out really nice with a magical school trope, and it's sort of the chosen one and all of that, but then it turns into a gory and gruesome war and you will just continue to have your heart broken throughout this entire series. And it's got political intrigue and strategy, and it's sort of like a military fantasy, and it's just so smart and so on the nose, and I adore this author, I adore this series. This is the series I credit with making me realize I enjoy military fantasy, strategic political fantasies, because there's a lot of that in this one. And yeah, if you have not read Poppy War, what are you doing? You're gonna love it. I hope. My friends did. Next, we have a book that has your favorite character. Most of these books have my favorite characters, okay? But since I'm trying to answer with a new book for each question, I'm going with A Darker Shade of Magic for this one, because in this book we meet Kel Maresh, who is our main character in this series. He is sort of our tortured loner who knows magic and is really powerful, and I do tend to enjoy those types of characters. There's something with Kel and his angsty self that I just adore. I know many people love Holland in the series, and also Rye and Delilah. For me it's Kel, okay? I adore Kel. I love getting to know him throughout this series, learning more about his backstory, learning how his magic works, because it's a really interesting elemental magic system featuring some blood magic in it as well. This is, by the way, the series that got me back into reading 5 years ago. Obviously it needs a shout out, and Kel was definitely a big reason for why I enjoyed the series so much. A book you wish you could live in. Many of the books I've talked about are fantasies where there are wars and things going on. Not necessarily interested to live in those worlds. I would love to live in like a fantasy world, but I don't want to be in any wars. So instead I'm going another route with this one, and I'm answering with Daisy Jones and the Six. Because can you imagine living during this era in music and being like a fan, going to their concerts and shows, being like a, what do you call it? A rookie? Not a rookie. A groupie. A groupie to the band during this time. That would have been epic. This story is about a fictional band called Daisy Jones and the Six. They had a very successful album, they went on tour, and this is the story about why the band ended. So it's sort of told in retrospect. It's once again told a bit differently in its format. It's told through interviews with these members of the band as they are looking back at the events that happened like, 20, 30 years ago, and are giving their take on everything. And I'm just obsessed with the story. There's something about this era in music. I just think it would have been so cool to experience this hype that is described. A book you thought you would hate but ended up loving. This is actually the truest statement for this book, because that is A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. This is a short novella, the first in a duology, and it's the most wholesome thing you're going to read. It's beautifully written. It's about a tea monk and a robot in the future as they become friends and are trying to find the answer to the question, what do people need? It's beautiful, it's very introspective and a bit like, not spiritual, but it sort of is very existential, perhaps is the word. I really did not think this would be my cup of tea. I read it as a part of Face Challenge. I listened to it as an audiobook. I had never read Becky Chambers before. I was confused by the title. So I was very skeptical when I started to listen to this one. And then I adored the audiobook. I read its sequel. I purchased the physical copy. I reread the story and I started to love it even more. Second to last prompt is a book that made you cry. I mean, this book has made the entirety of BookTube cry. Is there another book for this prompt? I don't think so. A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara, iconic, a modern classic, and I stand by that. I love this book. It's so brutal, so heartbreaking. I did not feel well reading this one, honestly. I did not want to pick this book up because of how it made me feel. But it made me feel so much and it made me cry so much. And I actually have a vlog reading this one as well, way back. And I have considered to reread it just to feel something again. I personally think it's a beautiful story about 4 friends that we're following through life. One of them who has a very traumatic upbringing that we get to know throughout the book. It's the way it's written, okay? It's 800 pages. This freaking book is over 800 pages. And I was never bored reading this one. I never had any complaints regarding the writing style, the storytelling, the flashbacks, any of it. And I feel like that is a great feat for a book, especially when it's as thick as this one. So like quality-wise, amazing, and I really got attached to these people and everything they were going through, I was going through as well. So if you're due for a good cry, I guess this is it, but please look up the trigger warnings beforehand because there are plenty. Let's move on to a happier book and answer the final question, which is a book you wish you could reread for the first time. I'm going with The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas. The things I felt when I read this one for the first time, I was giggling, I was kicking my feet, I was getting a bit hot and bothered as well, like this book. Oh my god, it delivered. I had the best of times reading this one. And I think that's actually captured in another vlog, so I will link that somewhere as well. This is a fake dating workplace romance where our main character asks her boss to pretend to date her and they go to Spain together and feelings start to develop and it's just chef's kiss. And those were all of the questions. I mean, honestly, like as I said it at the start of the video and I'm gonna repeat myself, this is basically the recommendation list created by me. All of these books I would recommend with my entire heart to most people. And if you ever want to know what my favorite books are, this is basically it as well. Please let me know if you have read any of these books and what you thought of them. I mean, I would love to chat about my favorite books. Feel free to do this tag as well. I would love to see it. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed. Please take care and I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye!